Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of At Home. This is my series where I get a chance to talk to other real people about the challenges they're dealing with. I was talking with my guest today, kind of in the green room ahead of time, about this idea that we're not really adjusting so much anymore to this new reality of living through COVID and what shutdowns can mean and all of that. We're kind of in it now. Like, we're past the sort of adjustment phase, and hopefully you're past the adjustment phase and you're just in it. Whether it's easy or not, we're living it right now. And the hope of this show, as I've said before, is those problems that we all deal with, the day-to-day, our family life, our career, whatever it happens to be, they're big for us. And then you hear the news about these even bigger problems out there. And the goal of this show is to really help all of you feel like these problems can be just a little bit smaller, as I get a chance to talk to somebody else about what their life is like and how they're adjusting or have adjusted, and what tools they're using and what guidance they can give to other people. So I am excited to announce that today's guest is Kim Dudash from Dudash Executive Coaching. I'm going to bring her in and let her introduce herself. Kim, how are you doing today?
Hey, Jeff, I'm doing great. Thanks for allowing me to join you today.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun. But yes, I'm Kim Dudash, and I'm the founder and president of Dudash Executive Coaching. And so really what I do is I work with leaders to help them become more productive leaders and more self-aware, to help them to be more aware of how they show up every day in life and with their teams. And so, I love what you're doing with your at-home series, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
I sincerely appreciate you being here. But you did leave something else out that the audience, I'm sure, would love to know. You don't just do executive coaching. What else do you do?
That's true. So my husband and I, we own and operate Dudash Farms. And so we raise and sell grass-fed beef and pastured pork. So yeah, I sort of have a dual lifestyle here. Um, and then something else that I picked up while we have been going through everything that we've been going through with COVID, I used to be an avid fitness instructor. And so
Oh.
I picked that up while we've been
Just a
through
couple
all of
things.
this. So I'm telling you, I just have my hands in so many different pies, but love it. I'm real energetic, and so I to sit still would probably be completely impossible. So
I can imagine.
yeah.
I can imagine. Well, I usually start the show off by asking, how are you doing? But it's interesting that you actually brought up that you're doing fitness instructing again, too. And I want to dive into all three of the things that you're doing, because I think it's a good catalyst
Sure.
for what we usually talk about on the show. And the fact that you're keeping yourself busy, not just by kind of having your businesses, but also doing a healthy sort of business as well.
Mm.
What prompted you to get back into adding yet another thing into your life?
Well, I think one of the things that I noticed when we first moved into the lockdown and everything that was going on in the very beginning when the pandemic first started, it's just that what I realized about myself was that I even though my office is located in my home and I have the luxury of being able to work as from my home as a base, I did do a lot of travel, and I had a routine of working with clients. And when all of that sort of shifted as businesses closed or businesses changed, I sensed in myself. It took a little bit of time, but I realized that slowly I was progressing into this sort of hole. It's like it's real easy to get up and say, "Oh well, I'll take a shower and get ready later. I'll just work for a while in my grubbies and what my brother calls his give up gear." And so then I realized, okay, we got to stop this. So I needed to find for myself a sort of a routine. So and I also thought, that the only way to keep that positive energy going is to make sure that I'm continuing to be active, and just started really thinking about what are the things that I can control to keep myself healthy, to build my immune system. So I decided to hop back into to fitness for a while, and I'm really glad that I did. So it was really just how can I pivot, and you and I've both, we've been involved in a lot of conversations about pivoting, but how can I pivot to make sure that I keep myself healthy and I'm keeping my mind right, and so
You know what?
long story, but
No, no, no. I think that's fantastic to talk about too, because there's a through line, I think, in everything you just said, which is intention. You Everything you just
yes,
described, you did it for a reason, and I think that's. I mean, it's finally started to hit me personally, but that's why I'm so glad you brought it up, because more and more people that I talk to, whether it's on the context of this show, people I work with, friends, they started many of them have started noticing when they started feeling better, or at least came to accept this is where we're at, and that there are
mm,
things they can do to feel like a whole and normal person, is when they start being much more intentional about specific parts of their life. And now, whether that's healthy eating,
absolutely.
exercise, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what
It's
those things are,
well,
but
it's different for everybody,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
It's different for everyone, and I think that that's the key, Jeff. And as I work with a lot of my clients now through the coaching practice, it's really focusing on being very intentional about the decisions we make and about the things that we think about, and even in our self talk, making sure that our self-talk is leaning toward abundance and positive thoughts versus negative thoughts that really keep us from being able to move forward um, effectively. So
Hmm.
I think intention is such the key.
Yeah, and it's I was talking to my team at work this morning, and you just said something about positive kind of versus negative thoughts, and of course no one's ever going to stop having negative thoughts like that.
Oh
That's
no.
um, I was listening to a podcast. I'll get back to the comment about my team this morning, but I was listening to an episode of Simon Sinek's podcast called A Bit of Optimism, and he was interviewing Guy Raz from the How I Built This podcast. And the two of them
Yes,
were talking, and they got talking about optimism specifically. And I had never heard optimism described this way, but I think you just hit on it, which is it's not blind optimism. Where like everything is rosy, everything is unicorns and rainbows all the time. I can see that there's a lot of not great stuff in front of me, but I can still see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to focus on that. I know this stuff
that's
is not
right.
great around, but I can still focus on the thing that's positive that I want to get to. And the thing that came up in my team meeting this morning was somebody mentioned about doing daily journaling, and that she's very successful and she's felt better when it's not that she doesn't have bad days and good days, but on any day she sits down and starts with like the three things I'm grateful for, three things I'm excited about, and the purpose of that activity is to get you in a mindset of thinking about the positive things in the day in your life. I had coffee.
That's
Like I
right.
love it. Doesn't matter. Just something that isn't like thinking about the things that drag you down right off the bat.
Yeah. And, that's when you say that, Jeff, it makes me think, one of the tools that I use in my coaching business is the integrative Enneagram. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram at all, but if you were to put it in perspective, you've probably heard of Myers-Briggs and
Mm-hmm.
DISC and Strength Finders. And so I would describe those three as sort of like an X-ray. And the Enneagram is more like an MRI. It really helps it helps us understand more about ourselves in terms of why we do the things we do, the motivations behind our thought patterns and our behaviors. And so, I have noticed during this time, I think, one of the good things that is going to come out of this pandemic for me personally is that I believe that I'm a much better coach than I was in the beginning. And the reason I say that is because it's sort of like physician heal thyself. I've been using the tools that I use in my coaching for myself, so there's a way that we respond to the world when we feel very positive and when we're not under stress. And then there's this almost, it can be a subconscious way that we respond to stress and the world around us, when we find ourselves in a bad place. And so with the Enneagram, it helps me to understand myself, why I'm motivated to do the
Mm-hmm.
things that I do. So I've actually been able to sit back and say, okay, what about this situation is real? And what about it is what I am creating in my mind, um, based on how I typically respond to stressful situations or challenges,
Mm-hmm.
And so, it, yeah, it's just when we know how we respond, or we know when to recognize, okay, that is not a normal, that's not a normal response. Or when we realize that we're in that place and we can actually stop and say, okay, let's take stock of this. And so for your teammate, it's about journaling. She knows that when she gets in that place, if she can stop and make a list of those things that she, that she's grateful for, and the things that she's excited about, she knows that that's a trigger to help her get back in that mindset that she needs to be in to move forward and be effective.
I think you
So,
just
yeah.
described something that I've been like a tool I kind of sort of created that I've been using with folks that I've coached or just helped during all of this. I kind of call it a perspective engine. So the idea that like, how do you get yourself some perspective? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like something massive, but you just said it, which is
Yeah.
something that can just take you out of the mindset that you're in at that moment and just, okay, hold on, let me just get out of this for a sec to reset a little bit. And then you can kind of re-look at where you were at, almost like you were looking at an image of yourself and go,
Abs-
oh wait, hold on, why was I so dwelling on that one thing? And the idea that like
Absolutely.
self coaching, you almost by talking to more people. My wife tells me this all the time. She's like, Jeff, every time you talk to somebody, you come in the house. I'm in my shed, obviously. Like I should say, obviously. For people who don't know, I'm in a shed in my backyard. I've said it before, but not everybody knows. She's like, every time you come in the house and you were on the call with somebody, there was just a discussion about something interesting or helping them. You come in with all this energy and you're excited, and it made me realize, like, yeah, it helps because it lets me get perspective on the things I'm doing because I'm not talking about myself. They're talking about them.
Right.
I'm providing them some guidance, and it again takes me out of thinking about my own things for long enough to get some perspective. I'm like, oh wait, I stopped thinking about that for a few minutes. I'm not all consumed by it, and it helps. It really
Right.
does.
It does. It so does. And every time I work with a client, I think I learn something about myself from everyone that that I work with. For that very reason. I mean, yeah, it's just when you can get a different perspective, or you can step away from everything that is consuming you. And for you, Jeff, I mean, that is a part of who you are. You are someone who is so energetic and so motivating, and so, and when you're able to fulfill that, then it makes you, it feels something in you when you're able to do that for someone else. So I totally get that. um
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, kind of changing gears just a little bit. So you touched on this. You made a comment about this a minute ago about kind of finding some happiness. You made a comment about finding some happiness, or at least some positivity in all of this that we've all been dealing with for the past. I think it's been 9 months. It feels like 2 years, but I don't know. Time doesn't seem to mean anything anymore at this point. I am really curious. If you were to focus on, or just pick one thing that has been like either something you've discovered or you found that is actually really positive for you out of all of this that we've dealing with, or the changes you've had to make in your life, what would that be?
well, so one thing, I think there's a lot of things that I could say that have come out of this that are very positive. But Brian is my husband. So we live on this farm in beautiful East Tennessee, and we're able to. We both have separate businesses, and then we have the farm business. Um, so one of the things I think that I've come to appreciate more, not that I didn't appreciate it before, but I think I appreciate it even more now, is how simple how simple I try to live my life. So, sometimes now we love to travel, and with my business, I travel quite a bit, or was traveling quite a bit, and he was too. But I think one of the things that I have really taken from this that I'm so thankful for is that I live a simple life, and I enjoy just the simplicity of my family and I guess I've realized that I am so rich with what I have, that is so very simple, but it is so um, beautiful and pure. So I love that. And I love the fact that I've actually had the time to slow down and realize everything that I do have, and that I don't have to have more. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes, especially before all of this happened, there was this almost this uh, push to be more,
Mm-hmm.
because it was what was expected, or to have more because it's what's expected. And man, I'm just so grateful for the simple the
Yeah.
simple life that I have. And you and I talked about this previously in the green room, just about how, in some ways my life hasn't changed a lot. So, we were very happy to be here on the farm, and I know there are a lot of people that haven't, may live in New York or LA, and they're really close. They're very close to everyone around them, and they can't get out, and they feel stuck. And I'm just so thankful that I live where I live, and I have what I have, and that it's very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm really happy to hear that about for you and your husband. And I've noticed that with other folks that I've talked to who seem to have a bit of kind of an air of calm about them when it comes to everything that
Hmm.
we're dealing with are those folks who I wouldn't say accept. It's more of realize that what
Yes.
they do actually have, I don't want to say is enough because it feels a little existential. But what I mean by it is they feel like, if I just stop for a second and stop trying to think about all this other stuff that I want to do or things I want to have that I can't, if I just forget about all that for a minute, you start to realize that what you have is actually plenty to live a
Yeah.
really comfortable life. And I don't just mean
And
things, but like the environment that's around you. Like we had
that's right.
we have this little yard at this house. It's not tiny, but it's not a big lot that we live on. We had it landscaped right after we moved in, which is before the pandemic. We haven't really had anybody over to enjoy it with us, but when we actually stop for a couple minutes and go in the backyard and sweep a little bit and just pick
Yeah.
up a few things, we're like, oh wow, we actually really love being out here. My son can run around, the gate can stay closed, and we can just lounge and read books and like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a simple thing, but it makes you realize. We even put before the pandemic when it was still summertime or when it was warm here, we have a couple lounge chairs right outside, like chase lounges right outside the shed. So my son would ride his scooter in the backyard up and down, and we'd sit on chase lounges and read a
Awesome.
book under a shade. It's like, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
those are the little
It's
things that just you can appreciate so much more because you just stop for a minute and realize, oh, I do have this. Why don't I go use that or take advantage of that and realize this? I can do this.
That's right. And I guess the word that comes to mind, Jeff, is just contentment, right? I mean, just I'm content with what I have. Not that I don't have goals, and not that I don't um, have things that I want to achieve, and not that there aren't ways that I am, working to grow my business, but I'm content with where I am and what I have. And I guess if we go back to your teammate and her list of things to be grateful for, this whole thing has just made me take the moment to be still and to realize um, all that I really do have, and not
Yeah,
constantly be, discontent.
yeah.
So yeah,
It's a tough place. It's a tough place to get for most everyone because
it
we're so.
is.
I mean, you brought it up. It's whether it's somebody who's used to being around physical things like buying stuff or playing with technology or playing with doing whatever they do, or someone who's used to traveling like yourself. And
Yeah.
that's a big chunk of that's a big part of life to not do anymore because it's not just traveling for
Yeah.
work, but you're seeing sights. You've made friends in these travels, and you do things with them. Like that's a big part of your life that just doesn't. At least it can't exist in the same way that it did before. It has to be something
Right.
different now. Um,
Right.
but I think it's so interesting that when you just said it when you kind of become content with, well, this is what I've got to work with. Okay, let's just work with that. You start to see all the ways that you can actually use that and do more with
That's
it
right.
and enjoy them more.
And I'm re for me it is revamping what I was passionate about before,
Mm-hmm.
or bringing it back into my life. And there may be other things. Well, gosh, we did more gardening this year than we've ever done, and I realized I really kind of like this. So I've actually started doing some things that I didn't think that I would really enjoy, or have reintroduced things into my life that I did enjoy, but I didn't have time for.
Yeah,
So, I think that there's if we will stop and take a minute and just sort of sit in that silence, we will realize that there's a lot out there that we may not have explored yet, that we can now explore because things are different. Um, And that's wonderful.
It is. It really, a good example of that is, um, I remember people kind of early in this process posting on social media and what have you, saying like, if you're not learning some new skill, or you should be learning a language or reading a book, like almost like this guilt sort of thing, like start taking advantage of it. Like, okay, yes, but that's not the way to encourage
Well,
people to do it.
a- and it's different for
It
everybody.
is.
So,
It
it's
is. I
different for everyone.
I I haven't been a big reader since I was in my teens, and I'm very much not in my teens anymore. And I can remember that I've been trying to get into books, and my wife finally was wanted to make a comment to me. She's like, "You need to put down like the Malcolm Gladwell and the Carol Dweck books and all these things. Like I love reading those things. You need to put those things down and go back to some like stuff that you just enjoy reading, like some good fiction." I am a huge Star Wars fan, if you can't tell from the stuff behind me. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy some Star Wars books. And so you know what? I've been finding it has been so much easier to like simple things like we watch a TV show. It's been Schitt's Creek lately, or one of the other HBO series we love. Go to bed. We finish them by 10 o'clock, and okay, we're in bed by 10 o'clock. I don't go to sleep,
Hmm.
but I read my book for like an hour, and I've been finding myself. I've gone through like 3 books in the last 2 months. I haven't done that since I was in my 20s, and
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. That's not like a monumentous thing, but I'm really content, and I feel really happy about the fact that I'm actually sitting down and
Mm.
reading a book. And it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it'd be a huge deal, but I haven't done that in forever, and it feels good to be like, oh wow, I'm just like going through a library right now. I'm learning things. I feel
Right.
happy. I'm enjoying what I'm getting out of that, and it's a good sort of reprieve from whatever the day to day happens to look like when I'm out here working all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, well, I don't know about you, but I think for me and several of the clients that I work with, they would say that they, before all of this, found themselves just going through the motions, just basically existing, and sort of like life was leading them along because we were running at such a very high pace. And so now it's, you know, everyone's had an opportunity to sit back and reevaluate. What is it that I want to do with my life, and not how is my life going to play out because I'm just chasing. I'm chasing. And we said it in the very beginning, becoming more intentional about what I want to do and how I want to do it and the decisions that I make, and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I'm content with what I have. And I don't know. It's just a total different mindset.
It
And
totally
and
is.
we've both said it. It all comes down to mindset. Now, I brought this up a few minutes ago. I know there are a lot of folks out there who do not have the luxury of being able to sit out in their, in their
Mm-hmm.
on their patio with their kids, and I know that's a lot different. And I think that it's probably more challenging for someone um, in those shoes to be able to take a step back or step away from what they're doing. But I do think that it's even more important for us to realize how much mindset plays in our whole attitude and our ability to be content. I mean, it's mindset is the key.
Absolutely, it makes such a huge difference on how you are willing to um, interact with a situation, in any given
Yeah.
situation. When you're thinking of it as Carol Dweck would say, like in a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. If you're in a fixed mindset, you're more likely to not adapt to anything. You just, well, this is just how it is, and I got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, and then you feel frustrated and stressed because you don't. Inside, you actually want to change the situation. You don't want it to be the way it is, but you're not allowing yourself. You're fixing yourself in a place where you're not allowing yourself to see other options. All you're seeing is the only way out of this is that one step forward. It's like, but that's not
Right.
necessarily true. It oftentimes is lateral changes or taking a step back to get around the thing that you're trying to deal with. And it's not like we're any of us individually are
Exactly.
going to get rid of COVID by any means, but we
No.
can do things like take a step back from something you're trying to do something a little different, and then also you realize, oh, well, all these other things I could do open up to you, like reading books again or whatever they happen to be. You just have to let yourself be willing to be okay with that.
I agree. And I think recognizing what you can control and what you can't control. There
Yes.
are lots of things that we have absolutely no control over, and allowing ourselves to let those things go, and then focusing on the things that we absolutely know that we can change. We can do something about, just like you were saying, it may be laterally, it may be a step back to go around, but focusing on those things that we can change, not the things that we can't change. And I've thought a lot about this quote lately, but Viktor Frankl, he was a Holocaust survivor, and one of his most famous quotes is, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the opportunity to, we have the power, not just the opportunity, we have the power to choose how we're going to react. Um, but we have to take that space and exercise that power, and many times we're just, something happens and we just plow through with our gut reaction or our um, knee-jerk reaction. But if we would just take that time to stop and take that power to choose.
To change gears just a little bit as we kind of wind down the show, now that you mentioned you and your husband both have your different businesses, but you also have the farm, and I'm imagining with the travel and things, you're probably around each other far more now than you have been in previous parts of your career. And without getting too personal, I guess what I was curious about is how has being at home more and having to find ways to sort of like work and live around each other on a much more regular basis, like how have you guys kind of compromised on that and worked on that together?
Well, that's funny. Well, it's funny because there was a time when, in the beginning, I guess, when Brian said, "You're just here all the time," So, not that, but I will tell you that we get along really, really, really well. I
No,
mean,
and I
we
totally
do,
understand.
you know.
Yes.
But so, and it's not like he doesn't get on my nerves, I don't get on his nerves. But we're not used to being around each other that much. And I was like, "What do you mean I'm around?" At first I was like, "What do you mean I'm around all the time?" But so it's we have like a main floor of our house, and then we have the upstairs, and then there's a basement. And so my office is upstairs, and his is downstairs, and like the middle floor is kind of like neutral zone, right? So we we try to plan it out so that we both have working time, and then we can come together and have lunch,
Mhm.
and then but we spend a lot of time together on the farm, um, doing farm work. But I don't know. We try to recognize when the other needs just time to themselves,
Mhm.
and but then we do enjoy our time together. So I think honestly, this whole thing has made us closer. Um, he truly is my best friend, and he truly is my partner. And so we are able to have those discussions when, you know what, Kim, I really need some time to be by myself, or Brian, I really just need some time to be by myself. So I think communication is the biggest thing, and just the fact that we're both very outspoken and blunt about things, and we appreciate that about each other, so we can just have a conversation and communicate and say, "This is what I need," and the other respects it and doesn't take it personally. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really a growing experience for us, that I treasure. So, but it has been an adjustment. Again,
Mhm.
we have to just schedule time together and schedule time away. So,
Yeah, it comes back to that intentional thing. Like you have to actually be
yeah,
a little bit or a lot more intentional these days, you and others
yeah,
too, in that time to make sure that the
yeah,
relationship can still thrive because
flourish.
it has to be different than it was before. Not
That's
dramatically,
right.
but it is different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Kim, thank you so much. This has been fantastic talking to you, and I think it's really helpful again for the audience, people get to watch the show to hear from a variety of different people who live in different places with different backgrounds and different challenges. Because one of the things I have noticed in more people I talk to, and you've probably found this too in your coaching, is that you know people there's a tendency to sort of compare yourself, like, well, my problems are harder than their problems or what have you. And I think one of the things I have noticed is when we can we can help people stop thinking about it that way and think about everyone has their own things that
That's
are
right.
important to them that they've had to sacrifice and do something different with, and it's
Yeah,
important to them from their perspective, just like your issues are your own perspective. They cannot be compared with each other because they're not the same thing.
that's right.
It starts to help people feel a little bit almost like a weight off their shoulders. I don't have to worry about other people so much. I can focus on me, and it comes back to what we talked about in the very beginning. When you can focus on yourself and just realize what's around you, it can start to make these problems just a little bit smaller.
Absolutely. And I love what you're doing, and you're so right. And I think sometimes just being able to listen to someone else's story and their perspective helps me to have a different perspective, just in general, not just about myself, but about life in general. And we can think we understand someone else's issues, or we can look at them and think that we've got it all figured out. And then once you have that conversation with them, you realize, man, that's not at all what I
Mm-hmm.
expected. Or so, yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's healing.
Absolutely. Well, listen,
Yeah.
again, thank you so much for being on the show. Would you like to leave everybody with where they can find you and any upcoming
Sure.
things that you're doing?
Sure. Well, I'd love to connect. You can find me. I have a website. It's dudashexecutivecoaching.com. And you can find me on social media at Coach Kim Dudash. Or Kimberly Dudash on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm getting, I'm involved in, my clients are starting to pick up now, and I'm working more with teens. So don't have any events going on just yet, since things are still closed, but would love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so
So
much. For
yeah,
anybody out there who wants to connect with Kim, you heard her information. I'll definitely include all of it in the comment section below, and you can follow up later. Kim, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really
thank you,
appreciate it.
Jeff. Yeah, thank you.
And everybody for joining, thank you so much again for being here on another episode of At Home. Um, Tune in. I'll have more guests coming up here in the next couple of weeks. If you have any comments or you want to follow up on the show, please put them in the comments below here on YouTube. If you like the video, it really helps the channel if you could put a big thumbs up. And if you hate it, thumbs down, but don't do a thumbs down. I'm kidding. Put a thumbs up if you like the show. I really appreciate it. Hit subscribe if you want to keep up with all the new content that I'm able to put out there. And there's a little bell icon. I'm realizing if you don't click that, you may not get notifications. So click that little bell and you get notified. Thank you again so much for watching the show, and we'll see you next time. Bye.